Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I trust you had a refreshing lunch break and are ready for the exciting sessions that lie ahead. We are now all set to continue with the day's program, and I encourage you to stay engaged and make the most out of the insights and ideas that will be shared. Let us now proceed with the next phase of our conference.
Now, I would like to welcome our next speaker, Professor Dr. Niva Hirono, Professor and Associate Dean, College of Global Liberal Arts, Ritsumeikan University, to present her views on how can ethical knowledge transform international relations and lead to a better world.
Okay. Thank you very much for your introduction, Teresa and Katrina. And Father Legacy, who is coming very soon. Father Deju, Father Mike, Father Eddie, and Dr. Mani, Miss Anuta, and Dr. Amit, my friends, colleagues, students from St. Xavier's College, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your kind invitation. And it's my great honor to be standing here to give a keynote speech. Congratulations to everyone in St. Xavier's College on holding such an impressive and important event. As Professor Callahan mentioned this morning, I too felt quite overwhelmed to receive this very challenging question from Dr. Mani. The question I was given is shown in this slide. How can ethical knowledge transform international relations and lead to a better world? The reason I thought it was very challenging is partly because my discipline, international relations, is far from being ethical. It is a world of greed, power, interest, hegemony, wars, and massacre. A founding father of international relations is Thucydides, a Greek historian and military general in the 5th century BC. In his very famous book, History of the Peloponnesian War, he strongly disagreed with the view that people should apply ethical knowledge in international relations, because ethical thinking is only a result of personal experience rather than what he calls, quote, universal truth and of right and wrong created by the gods. And I believe what he meant is the Greek god. He essentially argued that international relations is the world of power politics, and moral considerations will take country leaders to a wrong direction. This is what the founding father of international relations said. So, in such a disciplinary tradition of international relations, how should we approach this question of ethical thinking and international relations? Huge challenge. When I thought about it, what came to my mind is you. More specifically, a program that I have been running with the wonderful St. Xavier's College students. St. Xavier's College and the College of Global Liberal Arts in Ritsumeikan University, where I am from, have had 3 years of collaboration over educational program. Look at this picture. Some pictures from 2 years ago, 1 year ago. We haven't had a chance to take picture yet with everybody in the program this year. Basically, what we are doing in this program is to work on the theme of socio-economic development in Nepal. They form groups and jointly identify a socio-economic problem of Nepal, establish a research question, doing a research together, and devise policy recommendations, which are then presented to policymakers who are working at the front line today. What I emphasize to my students in this program is that people matter. We talk about the various topics in the program, including the definitions of development, definitions of human rights, and sustainable tourism, gender issues, waste management, and international migration. When we talk about these, I always ask my students to think about how these ideas and themes relate to people. So such a people-centric approach, I believe, is a key to ethical knowledge in international relations. In this speech, what I'd like to emphasize is that I have been saying to my students in the program, which is essentially how such people-centricism can transform the idea about international relations, which is the foundation of creating a better world. So in this speech, let me start by referring to what is dominant in international relations. I will do so in the general context first, and later in the context of China's international relations, which has been always my research interest for the last 30 years. In fact, the debate about China today is based on realism. In other words, who gets the hegemonic power in the world in the future? After taking you through a very grim, realist story about international relations, I'd like to shift my attention to people. I do so by introducing some of my findings in my field research that I've been conducting for the last 10 years or so. The people's story, or people-centricism, is just so different from the realist story. I will then come back to the question of how can ethical knowledge transform international relations and offer my tips for you to lead the world to a better place. So first, the grim stories. This is the slide that I use in the first class of the Introduction to International Relations in Tsinghua University. Thomas Hobbes, an English philosopher of the 17th century, wrote this book, Leviathan. In this book, he elaborated the key principles of realism, mainly consisting of these points you can see in the slide. So basically the idea is this: the world is anarchic. Unlike domestic structure where the police can enforce laws and regulations on people and therefore there is a specific authority to follow, in the international context there is no such authority. No one can enforce any state of the international laws and regulations. The world is an anarchic place. Human is evil. Humans always seek to dominate others. The state of nature then is that man can do anything with all necessary means to achieve domination, including violence. And that's why wars are a state of nature. The state of the international relations, sovereign states as the main actors, and the aim is to maximize their national interests, including security and survival. And what matters to security and survival is national power and capabilities. Essentially, these are the tenets of realism. Look at the picture. You know who this is? This is Leviathan, a sea monster mentioned in the book of Isaiah. Hobbes claimed that we need Leviathan, a strong and undivided sovereign. This is because we have to protect ourselves from foreign attacks, and we need a very strong government to protect ourselves. We need Leviathan. Can you see people in there? That's people. So in his thinking, people should give up some of the liberties for the greater good and seek protection and rule by a powerful sovereign. This is the basis of Hobbes' idea of a social contract. So you might think this is a story of the 17th century. This book was written in the context of the English Civil War. And you might think that, no, we don't live in that kind of world. The war do happen, but not so prevalent. We live in a different world. That's not true. Absolutely, we live in this world. This idea, Leviathan, still permeates through our world today. These people there, oh, sorry, that's a nice people. These people here, these are you, me, over there. You are summarized as these people today. Ukraine war, North Korea, war in Gaza, China-Russia relations, Iran-Hamas relations, all of these things that we watch on the news every day are the major topics of international relations, and it is a discipline centering on power politics. So we still live in the world of Leviathan. Leviathans in international relations are still with us, dominating us. So, by the way, I'm not making a value judgment here. Leadership and protection of the people are important. But my question here is, rather than making a value judgment about those in Leviathan, where are the people? That's my question. Where are the people? The power politics. So let's talk about this in the context of China's international relations today, which is my expertise. The power politics we have been talking about permeate through the discussion about China as well. Essentially, the key question that we are asking is, who defines the future of international order? Can the United States maintain its international leadership and promote democracy and human rights? Or China, which is an authoritarian state, alternate the rules and norms of international relations and seek international hegemonic power? That's the key essence of the many debates about China today. Ideological rifts with the United States is rampant, and the discussion remains binary, basically United States versus China. I will show you some of the slides that often appear as the top stories today, so most of you should have heard of these stories. So China's development of the intermediate range ballistic missile, US-China summit where they were talking about military confrontation, Belt and Road summit, and one of the major infrastructure development projects in Africa, technological advancement and Chinese telecom company Huawei's installment of 5G smart technology to hospitals in Thailand. So, it's not just the power politics between the country, but the China's power is permeating through the society of many developing economies. South China Sea issue and conflict with the Philippines and Vietnam, and all of these show that international relations is based on power and money. Also, the fierce debate about human rights. This is a very interesting point. This one is the UN Human Rights Council's discussion in Geneva. So the topic was about the Uyghur people's human rights. And the UN Human Rights Council was discussing whether or not the delegates should be talking about Xinjiang human rights issue at the UN Human Rights Council. Whether or not this should be an agenda is the question. And there is a vote, and you can see that the white one is abstention. The red one is saying no, we should not talk about Xinjiang in the United Nations Human Rights Council because it's a domestic issue. And green one, yes, is that Xinjiang issue is a human rights issue. We must talk about this in UN Human Rights Council. The vote was 19 versus 17. Which one won? 19 noes won. Which one do you think Nepal voted? Do you know? It's a no. Yeah, it's one of the 19. So look at this kind of figure. Shows that the world is divided into two camps. Pro-China versus pro-US. China versus US. And so we are surrounded by this binary concept. Some people call it a new Cold War. I don't like this word because it's just So very misleading. I can talk about it in another occasion. But basically the idea is that the world is divided into two camps. The US-China conflict challenges the world. This type of headline we see almost every day. The same story is told in Global South. The views about China and the United States in the Global South also feed into this binary view of the world. To what extent, how many people are pro-China and how many people are pro-US? And that sort of thing will lead to another kind of power, which is soft power, right? Again, this is a power-based discussion. But hang on a minute. Where are the people? Even though you do public opinion survey, pro-China, pro-US, what does that actually mean to people? That kind of discussion is completely missing. And one of the countries in the Global South is my beloved country, Nepal. I certainly do not see Nepal as a political turf between China and the United States. Of course, you have lots of discussion about the Belt and Road Initiative. Of course, you have lots of talk about Millennium MCC in Nepal. So lots of discussions like that. But I certainly do not come to Nepal thinking this is a turf of fight between US and China. When I come to Nepal, what I think of is this. People. So many different types of lovely people I see. It's not about the turf, but it's about the people. So all these variety of people comprise Nepal. Here what we need to think about is how these people relate to the global power politics that we are often told to believe. For example, these are the often discussed manifestations of Chinese activities. You can see on the left-hand side major investments, for example, in hydropower plants, in Pokhara Airport, Ring Road, in Kathmandu, etc. Digital economy with Huawei and China's relations with media. International aid, and many aids are coming in from China, and influx of Chinese products into the country. So all these issues are often debated in the context of China's expanding presence in Nepal, with the sacrifice of India's power or the United States' power. But what we need to think about is that how these activities relate to people in Nepal, particularly vulnerable populations, including women, internal migrants, refugees, and children, and what have you. The reason we need to pay attention to the vulnerable populations is that the history of globalization tells us that the adverse impact of globalization is often felt amongst the vulnerable populations. Elites often get privilege and benefit from globalization, but the vulnerable population often get disadvantaged as a result of globalization. Extreme underpaid wage is one of them. We live in the economic international society where developed country people buy very cheap clothes at the sacrifice of people who are working in developing economies under minimum wage. So I've been focusing on people in my research for that reason. Just looking at the state relations doesn't mean anything about what international relations mean to people. So what I want to show you now is that what I have seen in my people-centric research. I discover a lot of stories about something quite different from the US-China competition. One of my research projects is about China's roles in humanitarian emergencies. So I'm looking at what China has been doing in the context of earthquakes or conflicts or any context where people suffer and need humanitarian assistance. So Nepal 2015 earthquake is one of the case studies I have. South Sudan's conflict is another one. Myanmar's conflict is another one. There are no more case studies that I'm looking at. But I just want to show you 3 case studies that I have been looking at to show you how different people-centric research is from US-China competition, that realist-based discussion. So start with Nepal. So I've been looking at how China's assistance to Nepal has been discussed, and particularly focusing on 2015 earthquakes. I did this research in 2017 and followed up how people's views on China has developed afterwards. And this sort of thing is often discussed as China-India competition. I must admit that there are lots of sort of interview anecdotes from various policymakers that the Indian government was very nervous about China providing humanitarian assistance to Nepal because it is seen as an expansion of China's power to Nepal. But when I was talking with people, I went to the Tibetan border areas as well. I've talked with many people in Kathmandu. And what's coming out from my interviews is oftentimes that they don't really care about ideology and which country has more power. They did talk about the concern of Indian intervention into the constitution process in Nepal in 2015 and the oil stoppage after the earthquake. They did talk about that. But at the end of the day, what they needed is, what mattered to people is whether they get efficient and effective assistance. So more of a pragmatism was at display rather than ideologically oriented discussion. So just a very short snapshot of what I found. So this is Nepal. In Myanmar, there are many discussions about China's dominance. Myanmar borders with China, and China has been traditional power over Myanmar. So there are lots of discontent amongst the Myanmarese people about China's increasing power in Myanmar. But then when I do a very careful discussion with the government people in Myanmar and people who are associated with ethnic armed organizations in Myanmar, they actually tell me a very interesting story. They seek support from China and they try to utilize economic opportunities for an opportunity for peace. So obviously, government and ethnic armed organizations have been fighting for decades who gets more power and what kind of power sharing mechanism that they should have in federal system. But rather than maintaining conflict, and that's the violent conflict, they should actually utilize these massive economic opportunities offered by China and use that as a catalyst to make international peace agreements. So they both want China, but at the same time, when I talk to some civil society groups, and I haven't managed to do this interview, but if I talk to democracy movement people, they would be probably saying that the role of China is very questionable. They would be very skeptical of China. So there are certainly a lot of diversity with it. But what's really important to them is that to what extent China's presence helps us to draw some ceasefire and peace agreement within Myanmar. It's not about Myanmar should go with China or go with America. There are some discussions about that. But what's the bottom line is how we can make peace by borrowing some powers from great powers from outside. That's what matters to them. The case of Sudan was also very interesting, South Sudan that is. China is supporting UN peacekeeping operations in South Sudan and also offering lots of developmental support. The example would be a very big hospital in the capital of Juba and also building roads, etc. So I talked with South Sudanese people, both the government side and also rebel side. The people's views are actually divided. But then they're divided in similar points. One is that criticism and arms and criticism about South Sudan in the international community, that they are not keeping peace within South Sudan, and also arms embargo to South Sudan because they're doing civil war. And arms should not be sold to South Sudan because that will exacerbate the internal conflict. Those things were discussed in the United Nations. And the government actors told me that they wanted China to do more to stop any UN Security Council resolution to promote arms embargo. But the people in in a rebel side saying, no, China should do more to enforce arms embargo. So, from their standpoint, what they're saying is different. But they're actually talking about the role of China in relation to their internal conflict. And also what I found really interesting is that when I talked with some refugee communities in South Sudan, they said, yeah, China is good. China is building hospitals and all that. But it's nothing to do with us. The hospital that the Chinese people are building are for wealthy people. You need money to go to hospital. So we, the refugees, don't have that money. So even though China built this massive advanced hospital, we don't have any access to it. And that's a really interesting point. When we hear about China building roads and hospitals and all that, the international media is saying, well, China is expanding its influence. But then from people's point of view, that's absolutely irrelevant. What matters to people is that whether they have access to the assistance that China has been giving. And at the moment, from refugees' point of view, that doesn't matter. So you see, what I wanted to talk about is that the great power politics and binary discussion at the international level do not necessarily relate to the people on the ground. People have different needs. So once you go beyond the usual story of US-China competition, you can see people. After all, international relations is not just about elites. It's about people. And people's needs really matter. And our tireless efforts to understand people's needs, to me, amounts to ethical knowledge. I'd like to conclude my keynote speech by coming back to the question Dr. Mani posed to me. How can ethical knowledge transform international relations and lead to a better world? I will do so by offering a few tips to gain ethical knowledge that leads to a better world. First one is to go beyond the usual stories. I hope I have done a good job taking you away from the usual stories and tell you about what matters to people. So US-China conflict overwhelmed the world. That kind of thing needs to be put aside and needs to go beyond that usual story. That's number one. Number two, strengthen your imagination about people on the ground, or unpack multiplicity and the complexity. The three case studies that I was talking about all talk about complexity of people's views, right? Multiplicity. Rebels and government people have completely different views. And I'm just simplifying them to some extent to have this keynote speech within a certain time, but it's much more complicated. And so imagine how people feel in the conflict, in a particular situation. And number three, watch, listen, touch, smell, and eat with people. That really matters because that will enhance the power of empathy. The ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling. To do so, I'd like to make two final take-home remarks. One is this, and this really overlaps with what Professor Callahan was talking about in the morning. The importance of listening. Ethical knowledge derives from listening to people. There are many projects called listening projects in NGOs and many think tanks. You think what I'm talking about, importance of listening, is pretty much common sense. It's important to listen to people. That's how we were brought up by our parents. It's important to listen to people and respond to it. It's a common sense, and nonetheless, it's not happening. Many international relations experts and practitioners actually have their own idea of what should look like, what a good world should look like. This idea of democracy is better than this human rights is better than that, this lifestyle is better than that, you should have more money, you should have this and that. Always the story about who should do what. And oftentimes people come with their own idea of what is the best. It's not bad thing to have what's ideal in your mind, but the key point is you need to listen to others. Listen. And because of the failure of listening, many international organizations have had a catastrophic behavior in terms of international aid programs. There are lots of failing cases of international aid programs. The things that you did with your good heart just end up with disasters. That's because people do not listen. People come with your own preconceived idea and think that's the best. That's not a good way to start. So one important tip is to listen. And the second important tip is who you need to listen to. And that's really difficult because there is the politics of invisibility. When we say people, and when I say people-centric views, who are the people? And that's actually really difficult because you can't talk to every single population in the country or in the world. It's just impossible. So you need to select some people. But when you're selecting some people you speak to, many are tending to speak to government people, wealthy people, elite people, and there are so many people in invisibility. So the second tip I want to leave you with today is to be very aware of this politics of invisibility. Who are the people that you cannot see at the moment, but are actually existing? And that might give you some thought-provoking ideas. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you, Professor Hirono, for captivating us with your ideas and for sharing your profound understanding of these crucial global issues. Your work inspires and challenges us towards a more ethical and interconnected world. We are truly fortunate to have had the opportunity to have you here at ICSXC 2024.
Our final keynote speaker for the day is Professor Dr. Rameshwar Adhikari, Center Department of Chemistry, Tribhuvan University, Nepal. I would like to invite Dr. Adhikari on stage in order to share his insights on the topic from science and ethics to development. What role do thoughts play?
Very good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Mariji. Thank you so much for the invitation. So during the last couple of hours, I have done a lot of things. So I am a little bit confused about my own presentation because I am not confused in that sense because I am prepared in another way. Even though I am not going to change the presentation topic, neither the content of presentation will be changed. So thank you, Professor Hirono. You taught me a lot of things. I learned a lot of things, and I realized that I have to go to the conferences like this. Moriji, you gave me great opportunity. So I listened to you, from you, about the politics of invisibility. You know, as a scientist, as a professor of chemistry, I rarely think about this kind of things. I never thought like this. There are invisible beings. I know that. I feel that. I realize that. I understand that too. But I never feel like that, you know. Then you also talked about the listening project. We should listen to the people. I should listen to me also. Very important. We listen to other people, but we do not listen to other people, myself. And you talked about going beyond the stories and strengthen your imagination and about the people on the ground. Strengthening ourselves and watch, listen, touch, smell, and eat with the people. So you formed the background of my presentation. So thank you so much. Let me go to my presentation. So do we have other microphone? If there is, that will be better for me. Because I am used to move, while doing presentation as a teacher. So you can see the topic entirely different than what we listened before. I will be talking about from science and ethics to development. I will not talk much about the ethics. I think I don't believe on ethics. I think that there is no ethics. There is work that we do as worship, and if we do worship, if we make our work worship, we do not need any ethics. I think like that. Because of my limited knowledge of ethics, I want to tell like that. But I will talk to you about the role that the thoughts play on the development of science and ethics. So let me start with, I'm not used to this. So how does it work? So this, okay. Thank you. This is the topic I am working with. I work on polymers, nanomaterials, plastics, composites, and so on. But I am talking about today. I'm really sorry. Therefore, I was telling you that please use my computer for my presentation. Yeah, how to do that? I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I proved that I'm really not able to make a good presentation. Okay, thank you. Okay, now it works wonderfully. So let me start with this Nepali song. आकाशमा न्यानो घाम चम्किएको हेर मैले त गर्दा भने भाइ यो साथीहरुलाई म अलिकति नर्भस भएँ मेरो काम सुरु गर्नुभयो भने आकाशमा न्यानो घाम चम्किएको हेर मेरो नेता देश हात्न लम्किएको हेर टुट्छ बन्धन फाट्छ बादल घट्छ अन्धकार खुल्छ हाम्रो उन्नतिको चौडा स्वर्णद्वार. So with this I want to start my presentation. So I will be talking about some definition. What I think is ethics, is science, is development, is thought, is thinkers, mentors, and wakers. I will define something. Then I will go to some discussion on thinkers, mentors, and wakers, some examples. Then I will conclude. Finally. So what is ethics? नेपालीमा नैतिकता सदाचार यस्तो भन्छ. त्यसको एकदमै वाइड डेफिनेसन हुन सक्छ. There could be wide definition. But for us, for me, this is something, the knowledge of things that can be done, need to be done, ought to be done, or not. मेरो विचारमा मेरो लागि त यति छ त्यति हो. र अब गर्न हुने र गर्न नपर्ने, गर्न नहुने चिजहरूको बिचको अन्तरको ज्ञान. And that depends upon the context, consciousness level. हामीलाई कस्तो थाहा छ त्यसमा भएको छ मलाई लाग्छ. ठिक छ. ओके, साइन्स. अब साइन्स भनेको चाहिँ के हो त भन्दाखेरिमा अब the happening, what is happening, how we observe it, यसलाई कसरी अवलोकन गर्छौँ, how we measure it, how we evaluate it, र त्यसलाई कसरी justify गर्छौँ, that is our science. Science-मा चाहिँ we know that there are doubts. After we have justified everything, we have understood everything, we know everything. Even on that time, we have doubts. So we question. We try to answer the question. Again, we have the doubts. We have Sanka, Upasanka, Prasna, Uttar, and question has very special place in science. So, to ask the right question is already half of the solution of the problem that you need to know. So, from science to development, when we think about it, we see that 30 years ago, no good telephones were there. So now I need same time to reach USA or Australia today as I needed to reach Kathmandu from my village 40 years ago. There are medicines, amazing medicines. There are tissue engineering. Organs can be transplanted. We are even talking about the chips. These all things have been revolutionized in the last 50 years. So all these things came through the science. The science what happened? So this is computer. This computer was as big as the room before. Now we have so small computers. This sound computer. Of course, we have this computer. So you might know about this car. People are carried from Bhimpheti to Kathmandu. These were in the beginning, long ago, 1940. यो टेक्सटाइल रिसोल्युसनको बारेमा तपाईँले पढ्नु भएको होला जन्म मत खुर्सानी बारीमा हिरो लाग्छ नाइलनको साथ You might remember this story, very famous story. So nylon was created of history. So this is long ago. It was one of the very important topics people were talking about. And this is the nylon sari now. So all these things happened through science. So when we are talking about from science to the development, then also we think that the results of the Industrial Revolution in Europe, which never came to our country. So we have so many developments, so many infrastructures, so many modernization in the Europe and America, and Australia and so on, but we did not get it. We also had our science, we also had our powerful scientists, we also had engineers and philosophers. I'm sorry that I'm sometimes talking in Nepali. So you might know about the Changunaren temple. This Changunaren temple was made in 380. Later in 17th century it was reconstructed. This temple has the doors which are gold plated. And this is the time when Michael Faraday was there. Michael Faraday invented the principle of electrolysis, electroplating. But before the electroplating was there, Changunaren temple was already there. So we had the scientists, we had technology, we had engineers. So let me talk about those things. We thought at that time. We were able to think at that time. So what we thought at that time is here. Some of the examples are here. So when you can see this Morihiti, which was constructed in this time, in the time of the grandson of Mandev. Professor Jivraj Pokhel explains about it. This hiti is much lower than the ground level. So this was made by Nepalese engineers, and for 1500 years the water is coming there. You can go to Patan, still the water is flowing in this city, made by Nepali engineers. So this is the Nyatapola temple in Bhaktapur. It was made also long ago, 1702. And it survived 3 large earthquakes. And it survived, and it was also made by Nepali engineers, and it is still being maintained by some families of Nepali engineers in Bhaktapur. So let me give you another example. Everybody knows about Thangka. We call it Tibetan Thangka. I think it could be Nepali Thangka too. So what we know about Thangka is, this is one of the Thangka paintings. King Somchen Gompo is here, Bhikuti is here, Reitaraisi. So this was in the time of 17th century, 7th century. So this technology is writing with colloidal metal and mineral particles. And this technology was developed long ago. So if we go later in the 12th century, Oranico, the famous man, he was very famous in the palace of Kublai. He went to Tibet, he went to China, mainland China, he reconstructed many traditional buildings. He also introduced this pagoda temple, and this white pagoda temple was constructed under his leadership in China. And this is, by the way, the Oranico statue at the Miazhong temple in Beijing. After all this history, what we find is in the 1928, Gehendra Samset was born. And this man, with his long, big delegation, I don't know how many people, they were sent to Japan. Now we can go to Japan, we can start early morning, and in the afternoon we are in Japan. At that time, maybe it took months or weeks to reach there. And at that time, we even did not have good pencils to write. We also did not have good papers. They memorized all the things that they learned in Japan. And after that, when the delegation came back to Nepal, this guy, Gehendra Samset, together with his friend Muse Thapa, even the people did not have good names, Muse, Kale, Chiti, these kind of names the people used to have. Along with his friend Muse Thapa, he invented several kinds of machines, including guns, rice mill, water pump, and they were all he learned in Japan, and he noticed in his mind, and he made it in Nepal. And most of the things that he made at that time are not available here. Many of them are found in USA, in museums. And this guy, at that time there was revolution, industrial revolution in Europe, everywhere in the world. At that time, this guy was so creative. He came here and people realized that, okay, this is very creative guy. He can make guns. Maybe he will be a danger for us. Then people suspect that he was given poison in the food and then he was killed. So this is how Nepal went, in the history. We did not think about ourselves. We relied on other countries. We listened to what other people talk to us, what they teach us. We did not listen to us. Madam, thank you. You reminded me about the listening. But I'm now going to tell you about the people who had goals, thoughts, and who also had mentors. And are all the goals achievable if we make a goal? The answer is no, the answer is yes. It depends upon whether we achieve the goal, it depends upon how the intensity of our dream is. So long ago, Lakshmi Prasad Devkota wrote a poem. This poem was written before the man landed on the moon. So let me tell you some stories about the thinkers who, together with their mentors and makers, who had age, they were young, they had energy, they dreamed, had imagination, determination. Your determination was in Nepali sankalpa to reach the dream. So from imagination to creativity, as our Buddha taught what we did not learn from him. Buddha taught what you think you become, what you feel you attract, and what you imagine you create. He taught long ago. But I am going to talk about these kind of people who had thought and who did. So about determination, Sankalp. This story starts in 1929. There was a movie made by a German guy, Fritz Lang, in 1922. This movie tells us about the story of a woman who is going to the moon, 1929. And in this movie, there is a rocket, a jahaz, which looks like a pencil, and a woman rides on it and she goes to the moon. At that time, this boy and many other boys were watching the movie. While watching the movie, these boys, he's one of them, he was 16 years, 17 years old, and they might have thought, I read it somewhere, when I'm bigger, when I'm grown up, then I will also construct an engine like that, pencil-like engine. I will ride on it, then I will go to the moon. Then later on, when it was in 1942, not that boy, but the boy made the engine. It was launched into the space in 1942. It was called Forgeltum 2, launched on 3rd October in 1942, and it was the first rocket launched to the space, which started a journey to the space. And Apollo 11, which brought the people on the moon in 1969, was happened. So it was a kind of sankalpa, it was a kind of determination, the dream that the people thought about it, and they did it. And Buddha taught us to do the same 2,500 years ago, but we did not do. So let me go to another story. So I bring you to a story of a mother, the mentor, the guide, the earth, the nature. This mother had a son who lived long ago, about 200 years ago. And this is the boy. And this boy did a work which we call modern periodic table. Very famous in chemistry. Many people who did school chemistry know about it. Mendeleev. Mendeleev's periodic table is shown here. I don't want to discuss about it, but I want to tell you now, in brief, the story. The story is about this mother's son. He was born 1834 in Siberia. Russia ko kala pani bhन्छ त्यसलाई. The youngest of a dozen or more children. त्यो बेलामा children कति हुन्छ? When Dmitri was little, his father died, went blind, and later on he died of tuberculosis. So when he finished his school, he wanted to go to the university. Siberia is very far, thousands of kilometers, several thousand kilometers away from Moscow. Mother and the child, they traveled the distance from Siberia to Moscow, 10,000 kilometers or more, or similar. And at that time, he was rejected the admission at the Moscow State University. Moscow University. He did not get admission. But if there is a sankalpa, determination, dream, if there is a mother, if there is a letter, if there is a God, everything is possible. Buddha taught us this long ago, we did not learn. So, I will tell you another story. These people made the foundation of the science, and the science made the foundation of development. And all these developments made the foundation of ethics that we are talking about today. Therefore, I am telling you this story. And exactly we did not do that. Therefore, I want to remind you to our young friends, Manma by burnout. If you want to try to find a bird in the forest, then you have to go there with the bird in your mind. If you don't have bird in your mind, you don't see it in the forest. About this guy. This is Michael Faraday. Michael Faraday heard one morning while he was selling newspaper from one door to another door on his bicycle. This boy heard that there is an opening of club in the office of Sir Humphrey Davy. Sir Humphrey Davy was a very famous scientist at that time, very, very famous one. He wanted to work with him. He wanted to meet him. He wanted to be a member of his team. As many of us want to meet our professors and want to work with them together. We also have some dreams, but most of the time our dreams sublime. We are not able to make them persist. So, but about this guy who had the dream, which persisted until he did it. If he were living until the time of the Nobel Prize, he could have got at least 3 Nobel Prizes. This guy went there, he did not get the job. Later on, perhaps, he was told that if you want to work as a sweeper, or somebody who wants to wash the dishes, you will get it. This is my explanation, maybe perhaps it was like that. He accepted, perhaps. He worked with the struggles, he worked with Sir Humphrey Davy, and he did the best science ever. He is the greatest scientist of all times. He did electrolysis, nanoparticle synthesis. They were not called nanoparticles at the time. Magnetism, gas liquefaction, benzene, electromagnetic induction. He did not write any formula and equation in his papers. Do you know why? The reason is he was not educated like me. He was just 5th grade. So it is not necessary to go to school to until 12th class or go to university to be professors like me. I must have dream. I must have the determination that I will do it. So he was this guy. So this is the last story I'm going to tell you. This is all for my young scientists. This is not for you professors. So this is the last story. When you talked about the China-America conflict and the impact on us, I was a little touched. I love China. I love USA. I love Japan. I love India. All are my friends. All are our friends. All are our well-wishers. We never think about crisis, and they try to manipulate each other, and also sometimes maybe we are manipulated. We don't care. But when we feel that somebody is using us or manipulating us, to bring to somebody's business, then we feel very touched. I should just tell you in one sentence that Nepalese, during the time of Prithviraj Shah, they fought against the British rule. I don't want to say that Indians are weaker, but Nepalese were the best. They protected the country and it was never colonized. So Nepalese are that bad, in their survival. So this is the example from China. We have examples from everywhere, but by chance, this is the example from China. Not because of the love to China, but because there is one reason that I will tell you about this teacher and about this student. If there is anybody teacher here in this auditorium, I want to do namaskar, because teachers make the world. If there are no teachers, if we do not become the teachers, there will be nothing there. So this teacher and this student, a group of students like her, young girls, ladies, boys, they went to the authority of the university, school. They told that in 1960s, we have the crisis of malaria. Malaria is everywhere in the world. We want to We want to develop medicine against malaria. We can do it. We Chinese can do it. We young people can do it. We girls and boys can do it. Please help us. From the government, maybe the government was like ours, was not convinced. They did not support at once, but they put their effort continuously. Later on, they were able to convince Zhou Enlai, the Prime Minister of China at that time. And he realized that these people can do that because they are so determined. Then a group of scientists were formed, several dozen of scientists, young students, and they were given enough money, enough food, enough space to do the research. They studied plant products against malaria. 240,000 plant products were tested against malaria. Nothing worked. Sometimes, chemistry people know, if you want to study one compound, only one compound, sometimes it takes years. They were studying 240,000 substances, compounds, and they failed, but they didn't give up. They didn't give up, and they thought that, okay, maybe there is something in our traditional Chinese medicine, traditional medicine. Then later on, the group started to study the Chinese text, traditional text, and then they found that there is a reference to sweet wormwood. They did study all the text, sweet wormwood extracted, tested, it worked against malaria, and there was nobody to take, before a few years, if some people told that, okay, I invented the drug against the COVID, and please test it, nobody would be ready for being the subject. At that time, this lady isolated the ingredients she believed would work. She volunteered to be the first human subject herself. She is the first mainland Chinese scientist to have received a Nobel Prize in chemistry, scientific category, and she did so without a doctorate. She also did not go anywhere abroad, and she also did not have medical degree. So why I am telling you this story to my Nepalese girls and boys? This sweet wormwood was nothing more than titepati. So now just imagine, यस्तो तितेपाती नेपालमा कति प्रकारको होला र यस्तो खालको यो 2UU भन्ने मान्छे यहाँ कतिजना छ त्यसैले we should dream and we should be determined, we should do that. So with this, I am almost at the end of my presentation. Everything is hard before it is easy. So now we have the challenge. Challenge and the way forward. We see that science has developed a lot, much advances in biology, computational science, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. There are many politics of invisibles. So there is a risk that we become slaves of our machines. So we are losing our attention from us. We are losing attention from us. We are being the slaves of our machines. And then we do not believe that we can develop. This is really true. We don't believe that we Nepali have some capacity we can develop, we can be determined, and we can develop our technology, we can restructure our traditional technology. We don't believe that. We believe that something is there somewhere and we take it, we learn it, and we do it. That is our challenge. The challenge is that we think we are weak. So now there is a chance to turn the challenges to the opportunity. And that is, science is the key to the prosperity. Evidenced by many examples, I also wanted to tell you some examples. I told about the stories in the science, about the scientists, young scientists. And they created the science, and that same science developed our world. Therefore, utilizing this science also as a diplomacy, soft power. we should build collaboration. We should build network among ourselves, Nepal also, among Nepalese ourselves, and also with the international world. So we should raise our traditional science and technology. So scientist ethic is, in my opinion, do science, excel in science, face all the challenges, move forward. These are ethics. And nobody can disturb you. Oh, I don't know, again, remember what? Yes. Move forward. And do not chase the happiness, cherish it, make your hell your heaven. Nepal भनेको त हेलो नरक होइन सो नरकै हो दिस इज हेल बट वी हेभ टु टर्न इट टु द हेभन सो आई एम सरी दैट माय स्लाइड्स आर नॉट मूविंग यू नो यस सो ऑल एथिक्स आर useless if we do not pay debt of where we come from. I want to emphasize this. म हाम्रो यङ साथीहरूलाई एउटा भन्न चाहन्छु कि we should do that ourselves. If we do not pay the bills, not bills, debt, you know, I got from my parents. If I do not pay the bills, debt that I get from my motherland, talking about ethics is useless. There is no ethics. There is no ethics than paying the debt of my parents. There is no ethics more than paying the bills of my country. So for that, I should collaborate with my friends, with different institutions, national, international. I should be mindful, sincere, and work together. We should not have this sin. The greatest sin is to think ourselves weak. यति भन्दै मेरो काम सकिन्छ मैले सुरुमा पनि तपाईलाई यस्तै कविताबाट सुरु गरेको थिएँ I close it in English it could be something like your country can be built, you have to work on it. Your dream can be fulfilled, but you have to work on it. You have to rise, you have to rise, and you have to run. This is the meaning of this poem. The point is, बन्छ तिम्रो देश बन्छ तिम्रो देश तिमीले बनाउनै पर्छ अघि सर तिम्रो काम आइ कसले गर्छ कर्म वीर बिउज उठ लम्प पाइला चाल प्रेम निष्ठा इमानको दियो आफूलाई So thank you so much. So I am sorry that my presentation did not flow as I wished, and that also disturbed me a little bit. But I think I could deliver some message, not directly correlating to the ethics, but for scientists, ethics is do work. Do work sincerely. Thank you. If you are interested, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Adhikari, for enlightening us with the ongoing transformation in today's day. Your insights have truly deepened our understanding of the relationship between science, ethics, and development, and we are grateful for the knowledge you've shared with us today. It has been a privilege to have you with us.
Preceding the end of the conference, now we will have a distribution of token of love. I request Father Dr. Bobby Joseph SG to kindly come up on stage to present token of love to our esteemed keynote speakers. Firstly, I would like to invite on stage Professor Dr. Richard F. Callahan. Moving on, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Miwa Hirono on stage. Lastly, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Rameshwar Adhikari on stage. Thank you, everyone.
That brings us to the close of today's program. As we wrap up today's program, let's take a moment to appreciate the full day of knowledge sharing, lively discussions, and perhaps a bit of brain exercise for us all. Now, I would like to request our chief guests, distinguished guests, keynote speakers, organizing committee, and volunteers to move down near the basketball court, where we will be having a photo session, while the rest of you can enjoy the tea break. This is all we had on the agenda today, but the real magic continues tomorrow. Registrations open bright and early at 7:50 a.m. Have a great evening, and we'll see you ready to roll in the morning. Thank you so much.